How does someone go from competing at the Paris Olympics to being buried with full military honors in just 6 weeks? For Rebecca Cheptegei, the answer lies in a man's ego being so threatened by rejection, which escalated him to setting her on fire, leaving burns on 80% of her body. Imagine the contrast, okay? In August 2024, Rebecca was representing Uganda on the world stage. And I mean, she was at the top of her game, right? So fast forward just 6 weeks later, she's in a hospital bed, fighting for her life, asking her pastor why her ex couldn't remember the good things that she had done for him, just completely in disbelief. And it is terrifying to think that no matter how many medals you've actually won or how successful you are, it can't protect you from the reality of systemic failures and violence. It's just a scary, scary thought, but it's one that a lot of women have to live with every single day, especially in Kenya and Uganda. This is a story of Rebecca Cheptegei. Hey listeners, real life can be heavy and these stories reflect that, so please check the show notes for specific content warnings related to this episode and for links to support resources. Rebecca Cheptegei is on the top of the world as she crosses the finish line in Paris, heart pounding, sweat dripping. She's seriously living her Olympic dream, representing Uganda as she carries the hopes of the entire village on her shoulders. It's the quintessential humble beginning story that would inspire anyone. But little did she know that this would be the final race of her career. But the straw that broke the camel's back was knowing exactly who did this to her. Her ex-boyfriend, Dickson, someone who should have been her biggest supporter, decided to set her on fire instead. His cruelty towards her was beyond devastating. Her body is almost completely covered in burns. But for burn victims, it's never just about the physical pain, you know? And for Rebecca, she cannot wrap her head around why he'd ever do something as extreme as this. Sure, they had their issues, which were beyond repair, but this kind of betrayal, it was just crushing. Now, what's crazy is her attacker, Dickson, right? He is in the same freaking hospital, just a few rooms away, getting treated for burns he got while attacking her. Yeah, but let's first rewind. It's February 22nd, 1991, in this tiny Ugandan village called Chimini. Baby Rebecca is born as the second of 13 kids. 13. Young Rebecca starts running in school, and she is like lightning in human form, okay? She was out there barefoot, kicking up dust clouds and leaving everyone in the schoolyard behind. Now, she was a born runner, clearly, and there was no doubting it. She was very exciting and determined. This is what a former classmate recalled, speaking of the focused intensity that Rebecca brought to everything. She never gave up, even after getting rejected in Kenya, where she pursued athletics. At the age of 17, she takes an unexpected turn by joining the Ugandan People's Defense Forces in 2008. But it would turn out to be her secret weapon, and she is climbing through the ranks nearly as fast as she can run by becoming a sergeant. She simultaneously built a foundation for an international sports career by joining the UPDF Athletics Club. By 19, she's in Poland in the 38th IAAF World Cross Country Championships. The stakes were mainly for athletes just to prove themselves among some of the top distance runners in the world. And she doesn't just participate, she makes a breakthrough by finishing 15th against 93 established vets. It's like she showed up and said, y'all will know about me. And I love that. I love that for her. But here's what really gets me about Rebecca. She wasn't just fast and strong-willed, she was kind too. In fact, her training partner called her an older sister because she was doing deeds like sharing shoes with teammates who didn't have any. I mean, come on. Her mother described her as being always obedient, kind, and jovial, which further validates her compassionate side. Fast forward to 2022, and our girl is in Thailand, absolutely crushing it at the World Mountain and Trial Running Championships. The championships would not only take home substantial prize money, but also the chance to compete against the best on a global stage. By the end of the event, she's standing on that podium, gold medal around her neck, as the world's best. and she truly earned her reputation. She eventually became the breadwinner of the family because of how effectively she managed her money. Sources say the average salary in Uganda is estimated to be $45 per month, which explains why her family became financially dependent on her. Every morning, she's up before the sun, training her butt off. And every evening, she's back in her military grind. Meanwhile, I can't stop myself from bed rotting every single day. Rebecca's success should have been something worth celebrating for the rest of her career, but instead, it became the very thing that put a target on her back. According to her father, her first husband showed very little value for her. Supposedly, they eventually separated, but not before her ex-husband sold off all her properties first. What a POS. And this nearly sounds like a plot of a Tyler Perry movie because none of those earnings went to Rebecca or her two daughters because he allegedly mismanaged her money to support his first wife. Luckily, when Rebecca returned from Europe, she learned that he was financially draining her and got right up out of there, along with her two children, Charity and Joy. At this point, Rebecca just wanted a fresh start and to live somewhere with less violence because where she was just wasn't safe anymore. So she moved to Cheptegei, Kenya in 2021. Later that year, she would eventually settle in another quiet town called Kinyoro. This move meant she could finally train closer to the elite athletic centers that she originally didn't have access to, which is great for her. It was a new chapter in a country known for its running culture, and this is where she met her next and final partner. Dickson Ndiema entered the picture, and everything in her world changed. At first glance, Dickson seemed like the perfect partner. It's unknown how they officially met before they started their relationship, but he was the one who encouraged Rebecca to train at the popular hub for distance runners, which is what motivated her to make her recent move. And he supported her as she settled into a modest 2-bedroom house that she built on the small plot of land. But here is where things take a nosedive. Dickson carried major baggage and a history of loss that shaped him in ways Rebecca couldn't have possibly expected. His father died from cancer when he was young, and his mother, along with 2 siblings, were lost during Kenya's post-election violence in 2007, an event that cost 1,200 people their lives. Now, according to his sister, Dickson and his surviving siblings later moved thanks to their older brother, who has since passed in 2016. I mean, it just sounds like an awful series of unfortunate events in this family. Dickson was a middle school dropout and turned to sports to support himself by assisting athletes as a physiotherapist. His love life eventually wasn't much better than the rest of his life. According to a Mozart Sport article, Dickson married his first wife and they had 2 children together, but their marriage didn't last. Why? Because of financial struggles. It became a constant shadow over their relationship until it eventually broke them apart. But Dickson remarked that he had another child in this new marriage, and for a while it seemed like maybe he was getting back on his feet. But no, once again, financial struggles put a strain on the family. And in a similar pattern, his second marriage ended in divorce. Things weren't getting better as Dickson's financial situation continued to spiral even further out of control. It worsened to the point where he couldn't take care of his own children anymore. His older sister, Naomi, stepped in and took custody of all 3 of his kids. To not only have 2 failed marriages on top of losing the ability to care for your own kids, it's just gotta be beyond devastating, right? Here's the thing. This isn't just about the lack of money or bad luck. There's a pattern here. Dickson's instability keeps repeating itself in a cycle. It makes you wonder, how did these financial struggles shape Dickson into the man he would later become? Because let's be honest, without some sort of intervention, therapy, or whatever to reestablish a sense of self-confidence, those deep wounds can't heal. This kind of wound can harden into resentment and control. And while none, and I mean absolutely none of this, excuses his actions by any means, we can see how his demons played a part in what would eventually take place. Now, at first, it seemed like things between Rebecca and Dickson were going great. Sources say Rebecca got along really well with Dickson's family, and his sister Naomi even mentioned, yeah, Rebecca, really got along well with them, and she would visit their home occasionally. Interestingly, the pair's families each recalled the relationship very differently. Sources say Rebecca's father denies her ever having a relationship with Dickson because she was still married with her children's father. At the same time, Naomi shared that she was shocked to hear people say in the media report that they were just boyfriend and girlfriend because they lived together as husband and wife, and she regularly checked in on them. But I mean, just because one lives with their partner doesn't automatically mean that they're husband and wife. So I don't really know if her assessment is qualified to validate, their status. But to others, they seem like a good match. Like maybe Rebecca was helping bring some light to Dickson's life after everything his family had gone through. Naomi even said that after Rebecca and Dickson got together, life seemed to finally look up for her brother. I don't know what sister wouldn't want to see at this point, right? Just a little bit of hope for their little brother after what he's gone through. But as we all know, honeymoon phases do not last, and their relationship turned into something seriously problematic. A former classmate of Rebecca later revealed that she didn't have peace because of the ongoing drama with Dickson that began in 2023. And in January 2024, Rebecca and Dickson officially broke up. The exact reason for their split? Well, that depends who you ask. When the two first met, Dickson was an aspiring athlete who basically worked as a struggling motorcycle taxi driver, so he wasn't exactly rolling in cash. Rebecca's brother, Jacob, claimed that the breakup was all about money. According to him, Dickson constantly asked Rebecca about her finances, asking things like, "What are you doing with all the money you make?" Like, ew. She's out here running marathons, representing for her country and on the world stage. But instead of celebrating her and just letting her do her thing, he interrogates her about her own earnings. Sounds like a scrub. And scrubs like him are some of the absolute worst in my book. Like, get the hell out of her pockets. Then there's another side to the story. One of Rebecca's friends said the real reason for their split was Dickson stepping out of their marriage. So now we've got two potential narratives. Was it about the money, or was it about cheating, or maybe it was both? I don't know. Either way, it didn't seem like a healthy relationship anymore. So Rebecca absolutely made the right choice by ending it. Here's where things get even more concerning. This wasn't confirmed, but it's possible that after the breakup, Dickson was asked to move out of the house. But did he stay away? No. He supposedly kept coming back to threaten and intimidate Rebecca to give up the house. Her bombaclot house, I'm sorry. Now, just after their breakup in January 2024, one moment changed everything. During an argument, Dickson physically assaulted Rebecca by beating her and threatening to cut her. Fortunately, her brother was there to intervene, but this wouldn't have been the last of his assaults on her. The thing is, Rebecca's story isn't an isolated one. For so many female athletes living in East Africa, success is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it brings financial independence and a chance to rewrite their stories. But on the other, it disrupts traditional power dynamics and relationships. And for some men, that shift is just unbearable. Think about it like this, right? You've worked your entire life to achieve something extraordinary, only to have it weaponized against you. This is what these women were going through. And one advocate put it plainly: many partners are drawn to the athlete's prize money. And with that prize money comes jealousy, control, and straight up exploitation. And for Dickson, watching Rebecca achieve what he couldn't was like pouring salt on an open wound. His obsession with Rebecca's finances wasn't limited to money. He wanted control over everything she had built: her home, her career, her whole life. And when he couldn't have that control, he turned violent. Now, what makes this particularly devastating is how predictable it was. This is the textbook pattern of domestic abuse. And while her athletic achievements couldn't shield her from abuse at home, There was one safety net that should have absolutely protected her, the police, but they didn't. Okay, so let's fast forward to February 2024, a month after his first assault. Rebecca had endured yet another brutal assault. Her phone was broken, her body was injured. So she finally decided to take that terrifying first step. She went to the police to report Dickson's violence herself. This was her first attempt to officially document the abuse. You'd think this is the moment when things would start to change for her, right? It certainly should have been, but it wasn't. The officers gave Dickson a mere verbal warning, y'all. Stay away from her home. That's it. That's what they said. No arrest, no restraining order, just words. And of course, Dickson ignores them like they never even existed. Like he just went about his day as per usual. Rebecca could see where this was heading. She wasn't safe. So she brought her father with her to the police station this time, hoping that maybe his male presence, his voice, would actually make them listen. And her dad did not hold back. He told the police officers point blank his concerns, saying that this man's going to end his daughter's life. But even with this explicit warning, the police, they did nothing. Like, what are y'all there for? By May 2024, things get even worse. Dickson changed tactics. He started sending men to intimidate Rebecca, pressuring her to give up her property. Like, okay, you're sending your goons now? Once again, she did what victims are always told to do. She reported it to the police. And their response? They called it a land conflict. Like, this was just some petty property dispute between two equal parties instead of what it actually was. And I just need to emphasize this point, okay? What's happening so far to Rebecca occurs far too often in Kenya and beyond. Nearly 34% of girls and women ages 15 to 49 experience physical violence in Kenya. When property or finances are involved, cases like Rebecca's are often minimized as disputes. But here's where things get just a little messy when diving deeper into the details of her ownership. The property dispute between Rebecca and Dickson revealed several contradictory claims. Police investigations uncovered that the land was officially registered in Dickson's name. Legally, it looked like his, but Rebecca's father presented a deed from March 2021 that showed Rebecca as the purchaser, with Dickson signing as nothing more than a witness. Dickson's sister, Naomi, she jumps in, claiming that they pooled together resources and bought the land together, a statement Rebecca and her father flat out denied, which is so strange and it honestly makes no sense. Because for Rebecca to have all the money and still have him be the one to take the cost of owning the home, a man whose income also was like a small fraction compared to hers. So I'm not seeing any logic in their claim. Like, be so for real. This messy ass legal situation was a recipe for disaster, especially in Kenya, where property disputes between unmarried couples are notoriously complicated. Now, by that, I mean, since Rebecca and Dickson just lived together and never officially got married, it made matters a bit more complex. The system, like any other, isn't perfect. It struggles to handle situations where partners who make unequal financial contributions or when traditional expectations clash with modern realities, like in their case, right? Had the two of them been married, Rebecca probably would have had a bit more legal protection under Kenya's property laws for married couples, although outcomes tend to vary case by case, just so you know. When relationships fall apart, proving ownership becomes nearly impossible for cohabitating partners, especially when they unilaterally claim ownership of the property. And yet the culprits just keep getting away with their manipulation. It's just an unfortunate oversight that makes my blood boil because that's what colonizers do, just on a much larger scale. And some men know this and will basically swoop right in to exploit the situation, disguising themselves as a genuine connection. For example, coaches who are supposed to mentor these young, talented women are basically often the ones who become the abusers. Because to them, it is far too easy to manipulate young and inexperienced athletes who are just starting out and who don't know the warning signs to look out for. And honestly, even here in the West, there's often an unusually bitter reaction to high-earning women. These attitudes typically come from men who can't come close to financially securing her the way she can for herself. What's funny is how they tend to compensate for this insecurity by talking about how high maintenance she'd be anyway. They sorely dismiss the idea of pursuing her. Okay. The most heartbreaking moment came just 48 hours before Rebecca's life was ended. On August 30th, 2024, she made one final desperate plea for help. She returned to the police station and reported ongoing threats from Dickson. And do you know what they said to her? Come back on Monday. It's no big deal. You got this. Rebecca never lived to see that Monday. The police later admitted that both Rebecca and Dickson had filed complaints before, but they'd been withdrawn. But instead of seeing this as a cry for help, they used it as an excuse to ignore her final plea for protection. They were basically like, oh, well, they no longer need us, so all must be swell. Just because Rebecca withdrew those disputes does not mean there's not an issue, especially if she's still coming to you guys. And honestly, that's not uncommon in abusive relationships, okay? Because victims are often way too scared or pressured to keep going. Okay, so now it's Sunday morning on September 1st, 2024. Rebecca walks into church with her daughters like any other Sunday. Meanwhile, Dickson sets his devious plot into motion. He contacts a friend with a strange request. He needed a lighter, apparently. When his friend asks him why, Dickson claims, oh yeah, it's just, some kind of emergency came up and he needs to leave town immediately. But his story doesn't add up and his friend presses for more details, sensing something is just not quite right. Dickson's vague responses and refusal to explain raise more red flags that the friend ultimately refused to give him the lighter. It makes you wonder if his friend knew Dickson was this type of guy to be impulsive and use the lighter for some harm. At this point, Dickson already has 5 liters of gas in his possession, enough to ensure his horrific plan succeeds. He even arms himself with a machete as backup. And then Dickson climbs over the barbed wire wall and hides in the chicken coop on Rebecca's property, crouching for 3, maybe 4 hours, watching and waiting. At around 3 p.m., Rebecca returns home from church with her children. Rainy weather seemed likely, so they went outside and started taking down the clothes from the line before they got wet. And then he struck. Dickson emerges from his hiding place, but some sources say there was screaming and arguing before he did the unthinkable. He pours gas all over Rebecca's back. When she turns around, maybe in shock or confusion, he pours more gas onto her front before lighting a match. And then within seconds, it was like Rebecca just became engulfed in flames. What's worse is her 2 daughters, only ages 9 and 11, witnessed all of this, everything. Rebecca's sister is nearby, and Rebecca cries out to her to put out the fire with a blanket from their house. When she rushes to her sister's aid, Dickson, he blocks her path with a machete, threatening anyone who dare intervene. He is hell-bent on making sure that he sees his plan through to the very end, no matter what. It's just sickening. But it definitely gets worse because he didn't just want to harm Rebecca. He wanted to completely destroy her. One of Rebecca's daughters later explained that when she saw her mom burning, helpless and in agony, she tried to help. But before she could even get close, Dickson, he literally rushed at her and kicked her away. And then there's this. According to reports, Rebecca's daughter screamed for help, for someone to save her mom. As Rebecca is burning, neighbors gather nearby, but they hesitate to do anything because they were too afraid to approach at first. And I mean, Dickson's threats at this point must have been very, very real to these people. This scene would put any normal human being spiraling into a state of total dread. This is something no one would have ever imagined happening in their small village. Part of the ground was now soaked with gasoline and charred, painting a grisly picture of their quiet community They couldn't believe. The guy is freaking out of his mind, clearly. So they didn't want to take any risks by intervening in an already unstable situation. They tried pouring water on Rebecca, but it barely made a difference. Rebecca, even in the middle of this nightmare, tries to save herself. She does the stop, drop, and roll move, something we're all taught as kids. But when Dickson notices the flames on her body are diminishing, he pours even more gas on her body. One neighbor, Barbara, later described the scene. I was in the house and heard people screaming, "Fire, fire." I saw Rebecca running towards my house, on fire, shouting, "Help me." And like the thought of seeing someone you know, a friend, a neighbor, even a stranger, completely engulfed in flames, crying out for help like that, it just sounds beyond horrifying. But here's where Dickson faced immediate karma. During the attack, some of the gasoline spills onto Dickson himself. The flames spread to his body, forcing him to focus on putting out his own fire. What an idiot. Meanwhile, Rebecca, she wasn't giving up. She somehow managed to run to a nearby compound and douse herself in a water tank. The amount of strength that it must have taken for her to keep fighting through that kind of pain, through those burns. This gave neighbors just enough time to rush in and help Rebecca. But by then it was too late. Her injuries were catastrophic. Neighbors managed to help extinguish the remaining flames consuming her body, and they loaded Rebecca onto a motorbike, which was the fastest transportation available, and rushed her to Moy Hospital for treatment. Dickson, who was suffering burns from his own attack, brought himself to the same hospital, presumably alone, because I don't think anyone in their right mind would want to help him after seeing what he did. I mean, would you? After hearing about what happened to Rebecca, her pastor got on the phone with her at the hospital. And the very first thing Rebecca asked, she didn't mention herself or the pain that she was enduring. She asked about her kids. How are my children? Even in the middle of this intense suffering she's going through, her first thought was for them. Once she knew they were okay, the conversation shifted to Dickson. Rebecca asked her pastor something that just really breaks you. You mean Dickson is not able to see all I've done for him? He could not remember even one thing or two things that I've done for him to stop setting me on fire? Why has he done this to me? According to Al Jazeera, Rebecca's father said that while she was in the hospital, she told him, "I don't think I'm going to make it. If I die, just bury me at home in Uganda." And the doctors certainly did everything that they could, despite seeing how badly burned she was. But it honestly was not the best facility for her to receive that kind of treatment. So her family planned to airlift her to Nairobi for more specialized treatment, but sadly, due to multiple organ failure, she didn't make it. Rebecca passed away just 4 days after the attack on September 5th. 2024. The Uganda Athletics Federation officially announced her death on their social media page, and she was gone at just 33 years old. And as for Dickson, his own crime caught up with him. The 30% burns he sustained during his own attack led to respiratory failure and severe airway burns and sepsis. Before he could face any charges for his crimes, he died just 4 days after Rebecca. Rebecca's parents said that while her death may have shocked the world, it didn't surprise them or their family. They had seen the warning signs all along, and they knew this was coming. Fast forward, Rebecca's 2 young daughters, Charity and Joy, are attending their mother's funeral just 2 weeks ago. Their lives were filled with everyday ventures of childhood, and now they are saying goodbye to her forever. Dickson's final act of violence didn't just end Rebecca's life, it shattered theirs too by robbing them of a mother. He also robbed the cherished daughter, sister, and supportive breadwinner of her entire family. They depended on her. But on September 14th, Rebecca's funeral wasn't just about mourning, it became something bigger. Fellow athletes showed up dressed in matching black t-shirts that read "Say No to Gender-Based Violence." Rebecca's mother covered her face in despair as she arrived wearing Olympic souvenirs from her daughter's Paris appearance. Paired with those souvenirs was a t-shirt that read, "Being a woman should not be a death sentence." And I couldn't agree more. The Ugandan military honored Rebecca with full honors. At her memorial, soldiers carried her coffin across the homestead where she grew up, with the Ugandan flag draped over her coffin. It was a tribute reserved for those who served their country with a high level of distinction. There were quite literally hundreds of officials, residents, relatives, and athletes who traveled from all over to attend her burial in this small village. That just shows you how much of an impact Rebecca had on others. While the community gathered to honor Rebecca, there was another announcement. The Ugandan government pledged financial assistance to Rebecca's daughters, $13,000 each for charity and joy. But let's be real, no amount of money can fill the void left by losing their mother. I'm sure it's going to be helpful, but that's the truth. Co-founder of T-Ropes Angels said, "What is heartbreaking is her children witnessed their mother's attack," which makes me think about how awful it is to see any fire devastation in person, but for it to be your mom, that has to be the worst possible thing to witness as a child. Even as an adult, honestly, I can't imagine, but especially as a child. That kind of psychological impact will unfortunately follow them for years, if not forever, even with the financial support and community care. Eilish McCoglin, a British Olympian runner, tweeted this: "This is heartbreaking, even more heartbreaking that it's not the first time the athletics community has lost such incredible female athletes to domestic violence. It needs to stop. R.I.P. Rebecca." Leading up to Rebecca's death, similar tragedies happened to fellow female athletes Agnes Tirop in 2021, who got stabbed to death, and Damaris Matua in 2022, who got strangled, both of which had partners confirmed to be the main suspects by authorities. They don't even have time to fully learn from one movement to the next with how often these cases keep happening. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo, she announced that a sports venue would bear Rebecca's name, and it would be like a beacon of remembrance standing in the city where she competed just weeks before her murder. Back home in Uganda, local officials proposed similar tributes, a road and the sports venue named after their hometown hero. But I can't help but keep going back to the fact that since 2021, Kenya lost 3 female athletes to murder. All of them were killed by romantic partners. 3 women who reached unimaginable heights in their careers gone, all because their success challenges fragile male egos. Now, Rebecca's death absolutely triggered collective condemnation. But at the end of the day, financial support, venue namings, and military honors are important gestures, but they're still not nearly enough, because Rebecca's true legacy really depends on whether her death sparks change, doesn't it? It makes the most sense, right? So that her daughters can go on to feel protected if they should ever be in the same situation. Or other East African female athletes. Will police take threats more seriously? Why are the warning signs ignored? Will resources be allocated to protect women reporting violence? Like, will education challenge toxic attitudes that make some men see women and their success as threats? I sure hope so, but only time will tell. Maybe the most important part of her legacy won't be the races that she ran. It would be the conversations that her death started. We build stadiums to honor champions like Rebecca, but what good are those tributes if we can't build systems to keep them alive? Experts across Kenya are demanding for better training and support systems. Because seriously, telling somebody whose life is in danger, come back on Monday, that's not protection. That's straight up negligence. Coach Malinga told AFP she greatly contributed to the promotion of athletics until her last days. And from the look of this picture of her smiling with Italian athletes after swapping shirts, you could just tell she really was a light to anyone who was lucky enough to have met her. After her life ended, Barbara, her neighbor, said she was a very good neighbor and just recently shared with me maize that she harvested. One thing's for certain, she was truly loved and will be missed very dearly by those who knew her. I will catch you in the next Murder Mystery Motherland.